Nos enfants écoutent les histoires que nous lisons. Et si nous écoutions les leurs? Bienvenue sur Histoire de naissance, podcast de Lindsay et Marlène, doula et maman passionnées par la naissance.
On te raconte des histoires vraies de grossesse et de naissance grâce à des invités sincères et authentiques. Alors c'est parti, détends-toi et laisse-toi bercer. Bonjour et bienvenue à tous sur un épisode spécial d'Histoire de naissance, cette fois-ci en anglais. Vous pouvez nous retrouver sur le prochain épisode pour une nouvelle histoire en français. Maintenant, je parle en anglais. Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of Histoire de naissance, this time in English. Today I am joined by Anna, who will share the story of the birth of her son at home. Hi Anna, how are you?
Good to be here.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
I can't wait to hear your story. To start, can you tell us a little about you and your family? How you came to be in France, how you met your husband?
Yeah. So yes, I'm originally from the UK, which is relevant to my birth story also because birth cultures are very different between France and the UK. Mm-hmm. So I'm originally from the UK. I came to Strasbourg for my year abroad in university. That's when I met my husband. We had a couple of years long distance or living in various places. And then we came back to Strasbourg in 2013 and we've been settled here ever since. Okay. So we got married super young in 2013 and then waited quite a long time to have a kid. So married in 2013, I was 23, and then we started trying when I was 28.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, my husband's name is David, and we have a little boy called Fergus who was born in 2019. So he's 6.5. He was born in August 2019.
Okay. And so how was it to decide you were going to start trying to have a family?
Right.
How did you know you were ready?
Just like my body decided I was ready.
Okay.
I just kind of felt like it was time.
Okay.
Kind of like a non-verbal generalized feeling. Mm-hmm. Also, like more practically, this is also kind of relevant context, but after we got married in 2013 and I had obviously left my home country and I also at that point had lost my way like career-wise. So I had started out as a translator for a few years and because of my like burnout depression phase, I had to leave. I had essentially abandoned my career and I went into like service work, which was great for a time, but it also was not what I wanted for my life long term. So I was 28 and my career dreams were nowhere to be seen kind of thing. And I thought, well, may as well. I want to have a kid, so let's have a kid now and then have another stab at the career after I get that. After I get one kind of a new chapter behind me. Which it did kind of work out, which is great.
Great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the advantages of having a child, or at least, no, I shouldn't say that as a general thing at all, but what I found was that it was like opening a portal to a new life and a whole new world of acquaintances and a whole new network and a lot of really cool, interesting women who really wanted to invest in each other and support each other, and that was really revolutionary in my personal life and my professional life as well. Anyway, that's an aside. But yeah. No,
I found that too, that the friendships I've made as a mom can be really deep and supportive in a way that
we're so much more invested in each other
from before I had kids.
And
some of those people don't have kids that I'm friends with. But it's like I changed. So I totally agree and see what you mean. And then once you just made that decision, how was it?
So it took me about 9 months to get pregnant. Okay. So we did a first month of like proper trying, in quotes, quote unquote proper trying, and it immediately felt too like stressful and control freaky to be like, when am I ovulating and all that kind of stuff. And then so after, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 cycles of doing that, we decided to just not use protection and see how long it took. And I actually got pregnant just after we moved to a place where we had space to have a baby. So so there was probably that going on as well. But I also at the time had undiagnosed PCOS. So it probably took a little bit longer as well due to that.
Okay. So you didn't know that at the time you got pregnant?
It was a suspicion at the time, but my gynecologist has since confirmed it officially. But I didn't know like anything about how to support my fertility at the time, like because it was only a suspicion. I didn't know if there was anything I could do, and The gynecologist that I spoke to at the time was like, nah.
Oh,
Classic. Yeah.
Just dismissed.
Just dismissed, yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you got pregnant, how was that? Were you
how was the
happy?
pregnancy?
Was it,
yeah.
Or how was like learning that you were...
I remember feeling a little bit like confused and dissociated. So I'd had two chemical pregnancies, like very, very early miscarriages in those 9 months, where like I did just have my period more or less at the time I was expecting it, but my whole hormonal process felt very, very different to usual. So I was pretty sure I was pregnant both of those times, and then had a slightly late and very different than usual period. I didn't experience those with like a huge amount of grief. It was like, I wouldn't really consider that in terms of my personal experience. I didn't count it as a miscarriage in my head, but when I did finally get a proper positive pregnancy test, I was kind of like, is this going to be the one that really holds? I hadn't had a proper positive pregnancy test with the other ones. It was just a suspicion, but I was still kind of like, and I had friends who'd had miscarriages, so I knew that, having conceived and that first pregnancy test wasn't necessarily...
It didn't mean that there was going to be a baby.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I remember feeling somewhat overwhelmed and dissociated, as with like any huge life event, and also just like not feeling ready to trust it properly right away. And I think I'd just like gone out for a long run, and then I got back and did a pregnancy test, and I remember I definitely was running a lot at that time, and I remember kind of because it was in December, and I remember going for a lot of cold runs and at the same time getting a positive pregnancy test. Yeah, and it was a very faint line as well. So I went downstairs and was like, I think I'm pregnant. Like, cause, I didn't do like a big announcement to my husband. I think it was just like, I think I'm pregnant. And then
Did you do the test before your missed period or after your missed period?
I don't remember. Probably like around the time of. Yeah, I've always been a little bit trigger happy with pregnancy tests, so I probably did it like the day that my period was supposed to come.
Okay. Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, from that early point, had you already thought about what kind of pregnancy and birth experience you wanted? What kind of provider you wanted?
Yeah, I think I had, because we'd been trying for about 9 months. I mean, again, low-key trying, but we had been planning, like, hoping to get pregnant. And I had quite a few friends who had started families a lot earlier, friends who had opted to start families quite young. Or who were a little bit older and had already started families. So I had it was kind of a bit more in the ether, I guess, for me than it would have been if other friends hadn't yet gone down that road. Okay. So I had some friends' experiences to draw on. A close friend was pregnant at the same time, actually. Like, we overlapped by the end. Like, her last trimester was my first trimester. Okay.
And were they mostly in the UK? Or
no, that was a Strasbourg friend. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Actually, my UK friends all had kids later, so I was like kind of on the early end. Or not everybody, but most of my close friends had kids a bit later. Yes, I forget what your question was.
How you chose your provider and what you wanted your pregnancy and birth.
Okay. Yeah, so I think from very early on, I knew that I wanted to have a home birth and to have as little medical intervention as possible. So. As I said, for that, like, the being from the UK is quite important context there, because home births are much more normal in the UK.
Right.
It's like, I think about 10% of births are home births. You would have to fact check me, but that is the number that I was hearing at the time. And it's actually listed in the public health recommendations for the UK in the NICE guidelines.
Wait, so what does NICE stand for?
National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. Okay. So they've skipped the H in there to make it say NICE. Okay. Yeah. So it's just the UK public health guidelines. And their recommendation is for any first pregnancy, or at least it was at the time, I haven't checked if it's changed, but at the time it was any first pregnancy that shows no signs of complications should be the birth should happen in a midwife-led low medicalization unit. Okay. And for a second pregnancy, if the first birth went well and there are no signs of complications, then they really encourage you to have a home birth if that's what you want. So as an overachiever, I skipped straight to the second pregnancy guidelines. I was like, there will be no problems in my life. So there was that. It's much more in the culture. I had also, this is just like the random ways life works, but I'd also come across, it was a YouTuber family that I had followed a little bit, like very cursorially, but they had a video of a home birth under hypnosis, a hypnobirthing home birth. And I had watched it and I found it really, really powerful and interesting. And I remember seeing how the mum, even though like she's not someone I identify with particularly personally, like I don't feel like we would get each other really if we met, but I remember seeing her come out of it so empowered and alive and enthusiastic and ready to kind of take on the world, which is like all the effects of the endorphins and all of like the hormonal processes working to their highest degree, which is what it happens if you don't have too much medical intervention. I remember seeing that and thinking that looked just like a super powerful and meaningful experience that I also wanted to have. And at the same time, or not long after that, I guess, one of the podcasts that I listen to regularly had an interview with a hypnobirthing. It's the UK's leading hypnobirthing training program. The woman who founded and runs that, called Catherine Graves. I heard her interviewed and heard her all her thinking around physiological childbirth. So that's what got me down the rabbit hole. And then you get into like Michel Audin is the French pioneer in this kind of realm of thinking, and Ina May Gaskell. Those are the two main books I read, I think, was Ina May's Guide to Childbirth and Catherine Graves' hypnobirthing book. So Catherine Graves, her hypnobirthing training is been incorporated into the Royal College of Midwives in the UK. Okay. Their official training that they can apply in the NHS. And as a good Brit, when the NHS does or recommends something, I know that it's because it is not only safe but also cost effective. So I was confident that no one was selling me snake oil,
right?
Because this is all incorporated into the official UK public health guidelines, which are always, like I say, in the public interest overall in terms of being both safe and cost effective.
Nobody is trying to profit off of you, as some recent scandals that we have seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
People are getting rich from taking advantage of pregnant people. That's not the situation.
Exactly. Not at all. Yeah, not at all.
The NHS isn't.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and the main argument for that is that that our women's body, if there are no complications, women's bodies can actually do most of this by themselves under the right circumstances, and the best circumstances for your body to fully relax is usually in a like calm, safe, quiet environment, and ideally a familiar environment. So if you're comfortable having a home birth and you can do it safely, there's really no reason why not medically. Right.
If there's no
exactly,
or complications during the pregnancy or health conditions.
Thankfully, I was very, very, very thoroughly screamed by my paranoid French gynecologists. I have to say, on the flip side of that, a good friend of mine did go down the home birth route through the NHS, and despite having really, really great care, because it's more normal there, I think they didn't screen her as thoroughly, and she had some quite serious complications, and nothing dangerous happened, but it was very drawn out and painful, and she had to transfer to hospital in the end for surgical intervention. So, so again, like, I'm very aware this is not the path for everybody, and this is not prescriptive at all, but I do, I definitely benefited from a demedicalized experience, and
And so was it difficult to find a midwife who would attend your home birth?
Yeah. So it wasn't, because there's I think it's just the Annuaire des Sages-Femmes. There's an online database, and you can filter by region and by specialty, and they have a filter for home birth. And it wasn't difficult to choose someone because there was only one in Alsace, or there was at the time. There's a few more now.
And they had availability.
She had availability,
yeah. Liked her?
I did like her. It was a very interesting first meeting. I guess, like, she's very pioneering and kind of a visionary in the home birth space. So she's quite intense, and I remember thinking, like, do I want to go down this road with this person? Because this is, like, as I say, in the UK it's totally normal. So in all big cities you would have at least one major hospital that would have a home birth team, and it's integrated as part of the standard care. So no one is like a pioneer in their own head, like, foncé, like, no one is like, it's not an ideological choice. It's just part of the medical care. So there's there's no kind of interpersonal weirdness about it at all. So when I met her, and obviously in France, if you're doing that, you're probably pretty passionate about it, and it was quite an intense first meeting.
In France, you have to be militant.
Right, exactly.
To be a home birth midwife.
Exactly. So she was quite intense, and one of the things that she said to us was that, like, she made the point, which is true, I guess, but was like kind of felt a bit dicey to hear at the time. She made the point that when we, like, one of the things that goes on in our society is that we kind of ostracize and I was going to say privatize, that's the wrong word, but we like birth and death are these big massive events in life that get kind of pushed to a very private closed space within a lot of visibility. And she kind of made the point that, like, if you're accepting a home birth, you are accepting this a little bit more. If there were to be, there's fewer risks of complications, but if there were to be a complication, it's obviously more risky. And she kind of said, like, have you thought about the possibility that something bad could happen, and, you know, you might have to accept going down the road of a death in this experience. Now, this is not a discourse you would hear in the UK, because they were like all of the, because again, it's totally normal, and the teams are integrated into hospitals, and, you know, it's not the same level of choice. And she has obviously had to really think through the kinds of choices people are making when they choose to work with her. So obviously that was somewhat off-putting. But she's not wrong to say it. Like, you know, hats off to her for owning up to that. And
I think some people maybe have this idealized version of what it's like to have a home birth, and maybe she sort of wants to break that,
to make sure that people have really thought about it. Yeah, totally. But we felt like she was a trustworthy person and serious and thoughtful. And what I really liked about her, especially retrospectively, is that she screens really carefully. We had a lot of meetings about even like family history of emotional trauma, like not just directly birth related, but all the things that could influence a birth journey. She had us talk through a lot of those, and on the other side, I had my as I said, stressed out French gynae screening me like crazy. So we knew that we were as safe as we could possibly imagine being going into it. Which, again, for a friend of mine in the UK, I kind of assumed this would be standard practice, but they didn't do an extra just positioning check with the ultrasound before she went into it, and her baby wasn't positioned right for a home birth. And so we did all those checks, heaps of checks, and lots of like psychological support. And I mean, I didn't see a therapist during that time particularly, but just like working through all the emotional stuff that could interfere with birth. I also did spinning babies. I did. So I prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, like I prepared in all the ways. And it was essentially like the home birth thing became like a plan and a project in itself, like a I don't know how to describe it, but like I was thinking about before I came over, like why did I want to go down this road? And partly it was definitely having done a lot of yoga and meditation and running. I knew I had a sense of my body's ability to overcome things, and my own ability. Like I had actually, not deliberately, but I had been working for a long time on my ability to manage pain and discomfort, and like breathe through discomfort. In obviously the discomfort you experience in yoga class is not the same as the discomfort you experience in labor, but something about that training of accepting discomfort and relaxing into it and creating space around it really helped. And I think I'd already put myself on that path to being quite naturally able to learn the things I need to learn to have a fully demedicalized birth. And one of my most profound identity convictions is feminism. And I really wanted to experience my body's full capacity to put a child into the world without a man's intervention, more or less. And like, again, not to say that would be for anyone else, or, you know, I had a sneaking suspicion that part of the over-medicalization of birth might be around an underlying patriarchal fear of women's bodies, and a kind of desire to contain that and control it and limit women's experiences of their own power, which is maybe cheesy, But that is definitely how I felt at the time. I think I maybe still stand by that to a degree at least. Again, obviously, you know, when there's no complications.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I as a feminist and as a person who had already worked a lot on endurance and mental endurance and yeah, it just became like an important project for me as I entered motherhood. I wanted to do it in with the least interference from anyone else possible. Yeah, whilst being safe.
Yeah. What really like resounds for me is I wish that all options were available to everybody who wanted them.
Exactly.
I respect people who want a fully medicalized
100%
birth. People who want less, sometimes I think those like in between places are a little bit less respected or harder to access. Yeah, like having a walking epidural or something like that. So
having gas and air in the UK,
it's so rare.
In the UK, you have several options between no pain relief and an epidural. Yeah. In France, there's no pain relief or an epidural, which is insane to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wish that those other options were supported.
That it was more of a spectrum between 100%. Why when I was one of the first things I asked my midwife was, do you have anything for pain relief, thinking she might have a TENS machine or something, and she says homeopathy. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
No thank you.
Yeah. So it was like her version of it is like 100, like either you're at home and you accept the pain and you work with the pain, which like I was ready to do up to a point. That's what I trained myself to do. But I mean, you know, pain is still pain. Yeah. Or you transfer to the hospital and get an epidural. It's like these are extreme options here. Yeah. But anyway, that was what I wanted to do, and that is what we ended up doing. Also, I should add, I have migraines, and I have had migraines since my teens, since I was a teenager. So I have had to learn to handle pain since I was, since I was like 11. I have known pretty extreme pain pretty intimately. So I think that also changes your relationship to pain and your relationship to your. I mean, for some people it might make you think like, no more pain, I'm good. But I think for me it definitely, I'm not scared of pain really. To a certain extent at least. Yeah.
So how did the pregnancy go? Right,
the pregnancy. So first trimester was totally fine. I barely had any nausea at all. I was able to carry on running.
That's awesome.
I looked at my running log recently because I couldn't I re-downloaded my old running app and I had my old log on it, and I realized I was running because I got pregnant in I think late November, and I was running 40-minute runs right through till February.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I was impressed with myself when I found that out. I'd totally forgotten about that. So yeah, first trimester was pretty much a breeze. I remember being quite tired and like fuzzy and internal, but apart from that, nothing difficult. Also, in terms of my, like, obviously that's like health-wise, in terms of my personal and professional life, I lost a job around that time. So I had been working in the service industry, and I'd had to leave. I'd had to leave a job because of really difficult relationships in the team, and my doctor had put me on sick leave around that time, so that I didn't have to go in to be with these awful people. So we eventually managed to negotiate an end to that contract when I was just fallen pregnant, I think. And then in that very early stages of that pregnancy, I got a new job, but it was still service industry. And at the end of my first trimester, during my trial period, when my employer knew I was pregnant, I was fired.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And I never really knew why. I wasn't very good at those service industry jobs, so possibly I just wasn't very good at the job. He wasn't allowed to fire me, though. Because I was pregnant, but I didn't really understand what to do at the time, and so we just accepted it. But it was very, very stressful because the way it worked out in terms of French employment law, I was not going to be able to get unemployment benefit. So we were looking at going into a pregnancy, a home birth, which home births are more expensive potentially, depending how you do it. With my salary en moi, So that was pretty stressful. So first trimester, kind of tired and fuzzy and working a service industry job. Something like middle of second trimester, I lost that job. Very stressful. I was also getting terrible migraines second trimester. So I got lucky on the nausea, but apparently it's the hormone drop off at the end of the first trimester. If you're migraine prone, it can be pretty bad, and it was awful for me. I was getting like really, really terrible migraines 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So yeah, the migraines and the stress were not great, and I did eventually, so I had some time off work, and sadly I really, really wish I'd seen a psychologist at this point, but I was really stressed out about money, so I didn't, so I was living with just constant anxiety over that. And I remember going through so I had loads of time on my hands, didn't have a job. I needed an extra 20 days of employment, I think it was, something like that, to be able to get an unemployment benefit and mat leave through unemployment benefit, maternity leave. Yeah. So I was applying for jobs, but I was more and more visibly pregnant, and yeah, I did a couple of random weekends and trial shifts, and it was awful. That was a very stressful time, and yes, I was super stressed out, really, really anxious. I've always been an anxious person anyway, and I remember going on these really, really long walks so that because I'd stopped running at that point. I'd go on these really, really long walks to try and empty out the anxious feelings, and then I would be so exhausted, and I would get home and lie on the couch, and yeah, it was a difficult time. And eventually, so right at the beginning of my final trimester, I thought to contact an old colleague to see from an office job that I'd done a temp job with her a while back. And it just so happened that she was looking for a temp for just the right amount of time. It was unbelievable. So I went through this really, really, really stressful time where really sadly my little boy was just bathed in constant stress, which is, thankfully it wasn't too serious, but it wasn't ideal. Wasn't great for a pregnancy really. And then I got this job, and it was just mornings, but it still counted it still validated that if you've worked only half a day, it's still, at that time at least, I think it counted for a full day in terms of you've ticked off a day of work for the employment stuff. It was an easy office job that I had, most of which I'd already done before, with someone I liked and who is charitable towards hiring pregnant women. So a bunch of my pregnant friends had worked for her before. So that worked out in the end. Unfortunately, at that point, I had been so stressed out for so long, and then this job, it was I think I started at 7:45 in the morning, and it was the beginning of the summer in Strasbourg, and I started getting pregnancy insomnia, and it was really, really hot, and I had to get up really, really early in the morning, and I would sleep in a little downstairs, the coolest room in our house, so a downstairs back room. I put a mattress on the floor, and I would quote unquote sleep in there. I would just barely sleep, and then get up and go to my half day job, and then get home, and then it was the best. It was the least worst solution in that situation, but I was also not sleeping, and then we were on vacation after I finished that job. I had my days for Pôle Emploi, and then we were on holiday, and I never fully processed the stress. The rest of my pregnancy, I was just wired the whole time, which I think probably contributed to me going into labour a little bit early. So I was just within the window where I was allowed to still have a home birth, but just by 2 days or something like that. Yeah. Oh, so, and I didn't mention actually during that time that because I had done all this research about home births and hypnobirths, and found a provider in Basel who is a Brit trained on the Catherine Graves programme. Oh, wow. And we decided, this was one of the big stressors about losing that job, was because I really wanted to train with her, and she wasn't cheap and also was far away. And we did decide to do it anyway, which was a great decision. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. She's not a doula or anything. She's just trained on the hypnobirthing program. And
not a midwife.
Not a midwife, not a doula. She hypnobirthed for both of her kids, and just really developed a passion for it. So, and she was the only person anywhere close that did it. And she's and it was just, I think it was important for me to have a British mother figure to walk me through it, and yeah, it was really great, and she's a lovely person. So she trained us on hypnobirthing, and I myself did loads of reading around what to expect with a physiological birth, the different stages of birth, and my midwife did her own version of that. So I basically I experienced essentially 3 different trainings around it, and my husband got a bit of all of those. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah.
So how did labor start?
Okay, we were home from vacation. I think we'd just recently got home from vacation, and
because your due date was in September.
Right, I think it was like the 7th of September.
Okay.
And Gus was born on the 15th of August.
Okay.
Yeah. But I went into labour, my water broke on the 13th.
Okay.
David had gone out for a drink with a friend the night before, thinking this was like one of his last opportunities. He was quite hungover.
Oh no.
Yeah. And he was...
Nightmare.
Yeah. He was already up, and I was like coming to in bed at like 9 in the morning. And I felt like a little bloop, and I was like, weird, can't be my period. Can't be my period. Felt like a little bit more than just a bit of discharge or something like that. And then I sat up and drenched the bed, like the mattress soaked all the way through to the floor.
Whoa.
I knelt up in the bed, and the dip that my knee created in bed was full to level with water.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember. And unfortunately, in terms of in France, they usually induce you after 24 hours if your water's broken. And I really wanted to avoid an induction. I was open to doing a non-medical birth in a midwife-led unit. Like the CMC here would have been fine, or Rena. I was open to doing Rena, but I really didn't want an induction. Like I really did want the physiological processes to be uninterrupted if that was possible. And so I just had that feeling of, fuck, we're on the clock now. Yeah. Which really didn't help and with the stress. Exactly. Yeah. So I remember thinking like, okay, I can either panic or like try and kind of calm down and meet the moment. And I panicked. Yeah, despite everything I'd done to prepare and everything, I was like, this was not the plan. And I remember just like fully freaking out and going to see David, like calling David to be like, what are we gonna do? Like, and so we called the midwife, and she was like, okay. She was away on a dance weekend.
Oh my gosh.
But she was like, obviously I will come back, but but she was kind of like, so how sure are you that your water's really broke? Because I'm at a dance weekend, I can't just come and check. Like, oh no, like my floor is wet under my bed, so yeah. But I wasn't getting any contractions yet, and I could tell nothing else was happening. And yeah, so then she was like, okay, so I'll come back. In the meantime, try and get in with an acupuncturist. And she gave me the name of an acupuncturist. Okay. She was like, at least that's something you can do. Called around a bunch of different acupuncturists, and eventually did get hold of the woman that she'd recommended, and drove into town with a towel on the seat of my...
I was going to say, did you keep leaking?
Yeah, I was leaking then. And my bump had like shrunk way down and was like basically kind of baby shaped. It was really strange.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was really odd. So I went to this lovely acupuncturist who fit me in as an emergency, and she did whatever points she thought would be helpful, and went home. Weirdly, a friend of mine had been planning to come over, and we were storing some of her stuff, and she was going to come over and sort through it, and so I called her and told her what was going on, and I was like, but you're welcome to come over, like I'm happy to have you around. And she came over and started sorting through her things, and was like asking me for advice on how to, on like what should I do with this. And I remember just being like, no. Like, it's fine that you're here, but I can't have a conversation with you about your suitcases. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And
did you see that as like a sign that things were sort of moving along, that your brain like could no longer engage in a conversation? Like that's something I've heard a lot of, like, why do you arrive at the hospital and they're asking you like all these questions,
and you're like, what?
And it really takes you out of labor land, because it's soliciting the part of your brain that is not supposed to be solicited.
offline. Yeah. So actually, funnily enough, the couple of, like, I didn't realize this at the time, but retrospectively, the couple of days before, I was really out of it. Like I was already like, I remember like David and I had gone into town for coffee, and I remember just like kind of feeling really fuzzy and like wanting to nuzzle into him a lot, and like. And I remember David being like, this is probably one of our last coffees out and about. And I was like, I'm going to be pregnant for like 3 more weeks. Like, surely we're going to have coffee again. But it wasn't. It was like 2 days before. So definitely the hormonal processes were at work at that point already. And then overnight, that night, contractions did start to... my midwife came to do some monitoring, to check on the baby, and to talk about the plan, because then obviously we were on the clock, so she was like, after 24 hours I have to transfer you to the same CO, which is obviously like it's completely sensible and understandable, but it was more stress,
and the pressure again of the ticking clock.
So I remember my husband went into panic mode and deep cleaned the kitchen fan.
That's necessary.
Super
right
helpful
before you have a newborn at home.
Exactly. Priority number 1. My friend made us a cake, which is nice, and we went out for Debbie and I went out for a long walk, and I tried to run a little bit, even to try and like but still nothing was really, I wasn't really having any contractions, I don't think, during the day. Overnight contractions started happening, and we're getting really quite close together, and so we called the midwife in at that point, and she came. That was some point in the night, that night, and then it dried up again at like 5 in the morning, like they more or less stopped, and then so then I think she like came and checked on us during the night, and so when we checked in again in the morning properly, she was like, so like, I can't support the home birth anymore. This is my agreement with the local hospitals, is that I have to transfer over to 24 hours. And I was like, I'm not ready to go and have the induction. We've monitored the baby. We know that the baby's fine. There's no signs of infection, because that's the other big risk at that point. I want to wait. And so I understand that you can no longer support us, but I want to give it a bit longer and then go to the same CO, hopefully for a non-induction birth, like to have a non-medicalized birth in a hospital. And so she called them and negotiated that, and they actually allowed, quote unquote, allowed her another 24 hours with us at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, which was really nice. On the understanding that we'd be monitored and all that kind of thing. And we basically, the same thing happened again. Overnight contractions started again, and we're getting close. That next day we went back to the acupuncturist, more acupuncture. Did more of those kind of pre-birth things that you try and do to get things going, and then overnight contractions got pretty close together again. We called the midwife in again. Contractions were getting close together overnight, but it just wasn't quite coming. Like, it wasn't fully setting in. And then in the morning, she was like, "Loves, you got to go to the hospital. Like, this is it." And then I had to accept it, and it was really, really hard. I'm actually gonna cry thinking about it. I remember just like sobbing in her arms, and actually, like 5 in the morning she came in to see me, and I was like, "Is there anything else we can do?" Because she'd done like the scarf thing, like we tried a bunch of different things, and she was like, "This is the last thing we can do." But she like did like a guided meditation where she had me visualize like a meeting place where I'd meet the baby and have some kind of, I don't remember like what kind of exchange she was guiding, but like some kind of like meeting with the baby, like what's holding this situation back, and those kinds of things. She was like, last resort, let's go meet the baby on a spiritual plane. Which again, like, this is like, I'm a very kind of rational, like data-driven person, and I was like, I don't know, whatever, let's do it. I guess maybe this will help. So yeah, and that didn't really, nothing. Yeah. So at that point, I had to cry it all out, and I remember like we had a little bit of breakfast together. I was trying to eat something I couldn't really eat, and you know, like crying my eyes out. And but that was really the release I needed, and probably had needed for quite a while.
Right.
And then, but at that point, I also hadn't really slept for 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, or just like on and off, like brief. Yeah. Thankfully, I hadn't been in much pain. Like it was just like kind of between like pre-labor and labor, but it wasn't painful labor. And like it was just that discomfort of the contraction but my contractions weren't, and like I had known how to support myself to have not too painful contractions to the extent that that's possible. Yeah, so I wasn't in a lot of pain, but obviously discomfort, exhaustion. Yeah, so then we got in the car, drove to the hospital, which is just up the road, 5-minute drive. And I called my home birth training person because I want to talk to her as well, and like cried on the phone to her, and she was so supportive, and she told me about her first birth was an induction, and she actually hadn't needed an epidural for it because the hypnobirthing stuff had worked so well for her and for her body that she'd been able to self-manage the pain through hypnosis, and she was like, you know, this is not she actually said my induction was lovely, and this, you know, this is not doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have the birth that you want, kind of thing. So at that point I had to like finally like cried it all out, which is what I had needed, and we got to the hospital, and then labor properly started. Ironically, it was a bank holiday, so I think the hospital was a little bit understaffed and overbooked, and so there was quite a lot of couples and women waiting in the waiting room. They eventually got us a room after I think like an hour or so, and checked me out, monitored. They were really, really great about not doing anything we didn't want, and they were very respectful. They would knock on the door before they came in, like all those kinds of things I think have been really improved in the last 5-10 years in France, I guess. So for example, the midwife was very respectfful about if and when we wanted her to do a vaginal check, that kind of thing. My midwife had briefed them on what was going on, and they were very I don't think they understood why anyone would want to have a home birth, but they were very respectful, which was great. So at that point, labor was really getting going. They did a blood test to check if there were any signs of infection. They wanted to hook me up on an IV antibiotics right away, which I refused. So I tried to explain that to the midwife, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "No, I'm not having the antibiotics. I want my gut bacteria." Having done a lot of work around depression and mood disorders and stuff like that, I was like, "You are not coming anywhere near my gut bacteria, lady. I am keeping it." But she was like, "What are you talking about?" And then eventually she was like, "Well, can I at least give you a blood test to check if there's strep?" And I was like, "Of course you can do a blood test. I just don't want preventative antibiotics." And later when they invited the chef de service to come in and see me because it was a complicated, unusual kind of situation. And so thankfully the gynecologist on call that day was the chef de service. So he was the most senior person on the ward that day, and tout court, like what was the senior person for the hospital at that time. He came in and was very calm and smiley, and he was like, I understand that you wanted a home birth and this is not what you wanted, and kind of assessed the situation with us, and was like, well, I mean, you are now in labor, there's no signs of complications, there's no signs of infection, the baby's a little bit early, so I would prefer the baby to be born in hospital in case he has any respiratory difficulties, but apart from that, there's really no reason why I should keep you. If you want to go and have your home birth, you can. And I was like, what? So unexpected. Total turnaround. David and I were both like just completely disoriented at that point. So at that point he was like, if you want to, I can't, ethically I can't keep you. So we were like, okay, we're going. They were like, stay a little bit longer, we'll monitor you a couple of times, we'll see how fast this is going, see if there's any signs of complications coming, but if it's all looking good, we can send you home. So they suggested we go for a walk and just get some air and see if the walking helps speed things up as well. And so we went for a little walk around the grounds opposite the CM2. And my husband got distracted by some interesting hedges and was like taking pictures of spirals. Yeah, he's a big like procrastinator. What's the word? Displacer. He's a big displacer of stress. So if there's any intense situation, he'll be like, there's something else I could be doing. So he was taking pictures of like topiary hedges, as one does. And I was like leaning on a bench, labouring and breathing through my contractions.
Cleaning fences, or cleaning fans.
And photographing hedges, as
the two things that husbands do
when you're in labour. Yeah, exactly. Because they're super well prepared by society for these events. Meanwhile, I think my midwife had gone back to her dance weekend.
Oh my gosh.
And there was a free book hut thing in that park, and I picked up a novel. Okay. Yeah. And then, so after like an hour or so wandering around, or like 45 minutes, something like that, I was in my pajamas. Yeah, we went back to the hospital. Contractions were getting closer together, and I think this is the order of things. The midwives obviously checked us. We did another monitoring. I had been like trying to eat and drink to keep my strength up because I hadn't eaten anything. I'd barely eaten for 24, 48 hours at that point. And I was like drinking apple juice to try and get some sugar into me and stuff. And threw up all over the bed.
Oh no.
Yeah. I was being, she'd like set me up with a monitoring thingy, and she'd been like, how do you want to be during, because you can't move much once you got the thing on you. And so I was like standing next to the bed, and I felt like I needed to throw up. I didn't have anything to throw up into, and I was like, the bed is presumably better than the floor because it's covered in dressing, so that they can just yeah. So I was like, I guess I'm going to throw up on the bed. Oh, no. Threw up on the bed. The midwife came back in, and I was like, I'm really sorry I threw up on the bed. And she was like, I will give you a basin for the next time if it comes again. So yes, and then so I think they did try and stall us quite a bit because they could see that it was happening, and they would have preferred for us to stay. Yeah. And they kept like finding reasons to be like, we just need to check this other thing, and like, we'll be back in a minute to sign you out, and then like coming back in 20 minutes or whatever. And eventually I was like, get me the fuck out of here. And so obviously we called our midwife. And she was like, oh, wow, of course I will come back. That's unbelievable. This has never happened before. Yeah. She was really excited and like really kind of pleased to have that validation from the hospital. Mm-hmm. And she called in a colleague of hers from Mulhouse and was because she ideally would always want to have a colleague with her anyway, but because there'd been not really complications, but it was an unusual kind of situation, she was like, I cannot afford for anything to go wrong in this situation. Mm-hmm. So brought in a colleague. So then, yeah, and actually when they did finally come back in to officially like quote unquote sign us out, I was like properly in labour at that point, and I was sitting cross-legged on the bed, and the chef de service had come back in to be like, you know, final validation of the plan to go home and everything. And I was like, I had to be like, everybody stop talking, I have to breathe through contraction. And he like watched me breathe through the contraction. Thankfully, didn't say anything, didn't like interrupt me or anything. And then he was like, are you sure you want to get in the car right now? And I was like, how do you think people get to the hospital? Like, come on. Like, yes, I'm going to drive to the place I'm going to give birth, and that's what literally everybody does. Just in reverse in this instance. So then we went home, and that was about 1:00 in the afternoon, I think. Mm-hmm.
On the 8th, what day is it again?
15th.
On the 15th, okay.
Yeah. Debbie drove me home, and then the midwife was like, great, just keep me informed, I will come as soon as things are you know, happening. And so I laboured at home, tranquille, for a couple of hours, and I was in the shower a lot. I had the shower on my lower back a lot of the time. That really helped. And I remember, I think it must have been about like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, starting to feel somewhat exhausted and starting to feel like, not that the pain was so unmanageable, but that if it continued like that for much longer, I would have to go back to the hospital for an epidural, just because I was getting too tired to manage it. Not because it was so acute, right? It was more like the stamina that I needed to be able to hold it together is the wrong word, but like to be able to hold myself emotionally with the pain was, or the discomfort, was I was starting to wear thin. Retrospectively, that was probably transition. So we got home from the hospital about 1, and Gus was born at 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So once labour, and I was dilated 3 centimetres at the hospital around that time that we went home. So basically, once labour was properly happening, it was really efficient. Right. So I remember like dozing on and off on my bed, on like kind of all fours, kind of over my belly, and in and out of the shower a lot. And David went to set up the pool, and then when I was like in transition-y phase, kind of dozing in bed, I wanted to get in the pool, and I remember having an argument with my husband about when I was allowed to get in the pool, because he had thought that I wasn't allowed to get in until we were sure that it was right at the end. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to have some time in the pool and just not stay in the pool for hours at this point, because my water had already broken, there was a risk of infection if something went back up the other way. And so he called the midwife to settle the debate, and she was like, no, she can get in the pool, just not stay in there for hours and hours. So I got in the pool and didn't get out of the pool again because labour really was happening at that point. And I got fairly quickly to pushing once we were in the pool, and I remember because I'd done all this research, I knew the different kinds of contractions I was experiencing, and I was able to recognise the downward contractions that were starting.
Oh, wow.
And I had another like dozy phase in the pool between, I think there must have been a switchover at some point in the pool. I remember like kind of conking out inside the pool a little bit and then coming back to and the downward pushing starting. I didn't push myself. I allowed the contractions to do the pushing themselves. I didn't add anything to the force that my uterus was applying by itself, except like trying to get into positions that felt like they were working. And I remember, so at that point, David had told the midwife to come, and I found out later, was stuck in traffic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we were trying to figure out what was happening ourselves.
Yeah.
I remember like putting my hand up there to see if I could feel the baby's head and feeling something that wasn't my vagina, right?
Right.
But was not out yet. Was like partway down the birth canal.
Wow.
And I remember also like having like trying to get David to look, but obviously I was in the pool and I was like trying to angle myself, and I remember like saying to him like, I'm about to have a downward contraction. Next one, I'm going to push myself up so that you can look and tell me if there's something you could see. And so I did, and then he was like, well, I saw your vagina. And I was like, I know you saw my vagina, you moron. I'm asking if you can see the baby's head. And he was like, well, I could see something else as well. I was like, what else would that be?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. And that was like having brought him to a bunch of birth prep.
Yeah.
In
his defense, he's not a midwife.
Right. Not a fully trained midwife, yeah. And so midwife was on her way. David was like texting with her and being like explaining what was going on and checking that we were doing the right things and everything. And she had actually said that if for a first birth, the head will often kind of yo-yo a little bit to make space in the birth canal. And we knew that we could tell that's what was happening. And eventually, like, the head was coming, and she wasn't there yet. So David whipped off his trousers and jumped in the birth pool.
Oh my gosh.
In his boxer shorts and t-shirt. And the head was, like, halfway out, and David had forgotten from our birth prep that you actually have some time when the head is partway out. And he was like, Anna, you've got to push, the head's halfway out. And I was like, no, we're fine. We have time. And because she had told us specifically, like, you have, like, the head's halfway out, all the way out, like, and there's time to get the shoulders out, like, you will know if the baby's stuck, basically.
Right.
So a few more contractions, and the baby was out. So I was leaning on the side of the pool with my back to David, and David was, like, collecting the baby, like, around, like, from behind through under my butt and pelvis.
Right.
So he like scooped the baby up and then like passed him back to me under me. And so I basically saw Fergus for the first time come up through the water, which is wild. And it was like dark, and I just remember this kind of like eruption through the water of like suddenly I had a baby. It was so strange. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. And then I like flopped back on the side of the pool and had him in my arms against me. I was naked, obviously. Put him against my chest, and then I heard the door. And the midwife had arrived, and I shouted downstairs, "Julien est là!" and she came running upstairs to check on us, and yeah, that was it was wild. It was like super wild, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I remember just looking at and he was so calm, which is one of the like selling points of home births and hypnobirthing is they'll be like, your baby will be so calm, you'll see, because you were really calm and it was a calm environment. I'm sure that doesn't happen to everyone, but it did happen to us. So he was super, super calm, and I just remember his like black eyes, he has blue eyes now, but like they were super dark at that time, just like, and just being like, whoa, this is a person that just like came out of my person. Like, yeah, it was so strange. And and so Julien came upstairs, checked us out. We stayed like that for quite a while. In the tub, yeah. And just like making sure he was warm enough, obviously, and that his nose didn't go in the water. That's the big thing. And eventually it was getting a bit cold, and so they got us out. So there was my midwife Julia and her colleague Mathilde, who and David, who like all kind of got around us, because obviously I didn't have legs anymore, like I was kind of floppy, and so Julia and Mathilde and David all got around me and helped me push myself up with Fergus in my arms, got me back to my centre of gravity, and then I found I could walk normally and everything. And the placenta was still attached, so I hadn't birthed the placenta yet. So Gus was still attached to me by a cord, like we hadn't cut anything, nothing had. So they walked us through to the bedroom, set us up in the bed, like with towels and all that kind of thing. And I at that point was obviously euphoric and a bit out of it, and not thinking rationally at all. And they were like giving me juice and homeopathy for some reason as well. Okay. They were like, this is some homeopathy for your placenta, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. I don't, or maybe it was for like supposed to be for like recovery or whatever. I was just like, whatever, like gimme. It was like sugary water, I needed to be hydrated. Because I had barely drunk anything for like 40 hours at that point. And so actually for quite a while, my midwife was like, we kind of need to get this placenta out, and I was like, I don't know, I don't care. And then after like 2 hours, she was like, we really have to get the placenta out, like if I have to send you back to the same CO, they're gonna kill me. So then she was like, how do you feel about guiding this yourself? And I was like, I don't know, like I don't really want to do anything right now. And she was like, well, it's kind of a cool experience, you'll see, kind of thing. And so I did. I knelt up on the bed and started pulling on the placenta cord. Because I don't know why we knew this, but at some point she was like, I'm pretty sure the placenta has detached but just stayed inside the uterus, so the uterus like contracted back around the placenta. Okay. And I wasn't hemorrhaging or anything, so we knew that nothing serious was happening. But she was like, we do need to get it out so that we know what's going on, kind of thing. So I like just was gently pulling on the cord, and eventually felt it kind of ease into my vagina, and then I like popped my hand up there and pulled out. Oh my gosh. I know. Wow. Yeah, onto like a alaise on my bed, like onto like a bed protector thing on my bed. And then obviously she checked to make sure it was intact and everything, and it was all good. And then she kind of wrapped us up, and we chose to leave the placenta attached for about 24 hours, because at the time, at least, the research that I was reading was saying that we didn't know how long was advantageous, but definitely longer than a few minutes is good for the transfer of stem cells from the placenta to the baby. And I was happy to leave it a little bit longer. So when she came the next day, but less than 24 hours later, she actually burnt the cord with a little lighter, or a little candle or something. But that night she just like kind of wrapped us up, and installed Fergus next to me in our double bed. And was like, this is how you sleep now. And I'll be back in the morning. And she made us, because they'd done a blood test at the same CO to check if there was any signs for infection, but we hadn't had the results yet.
Oh, okay.
So she made us a chart for symptom checking, which I guess Debbie looked after. So she made us a chart with like hourly checks of how the baby was doing. If he was showing any signs of infection, we would have to go straight to the hospital, obviously. So that was David's responsibility, obviously. And we ate pizza and cake. And then she tucked us in and said, I'll see you in the morning. And that was that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was unbelievable, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a wild story.
Quite the story, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share about like the postpartum period? I don't know. I know you told me that you had quite a bit of breastfeeding stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
That we might have to make another episode, breastfeeding specific. I'm not sure if we have time.
No. Yeah, I won't go into in any detail, but yeah, breastfeeding was pretty tough. I think at the time I had undiagnosed PCOS, so I think I didn't have enough glandular tissue. But that's only in retrospect. And basically, my milk was quite slow coming in, but not disastrous. Gus's weight was a bit dicey for the first month or so and then picked up, but then plateaued much too early. And basically, this is like my one big regret around the whole process, was that I'd invested heaps in the home birth that I wanted, but nobody in that whole process mentioned that I should maybe also read up about breastfeeding. And for some reason, like, I had heard people say that like breastfeeding can be difficult and you should read up about it, something, but for some reason that had never gotten into my brain. So I didn't turn my attention to that really until we were already in a difficult space. And then I, being quite hard-headed, I like struggled through, and Gus was underweight at a couple of points, and that was very, very stressful. And at the time, it was also COVID not long after that. It was like he was 6 months when the first lockdown in France was announced. And so yeah, getting the support we needed, even like no one had told me what an IBCLC was. So like I didn't find out even who to speak to in terms of even what the right kind of professional would be until Gus was like 5 months, I think. So yeah, I did feel quite let down by my midwife and hypnobirthing training person, and even the hospitals here, like no one gave us any information about breastfeeding essentially, even though like I was going through a super privileged and resourced pathway. No one spent 2 minutes on breastfeeding. So that was a big disappointment that I didn't anticipate really. But yeah, apart from that,
is there anything else in your whole journey that you could have used but didn't get at the time, like in retrospect?
The main thing was breastfeeding support. I'm trying to think if there was something else. Oh, I really regret not going to a psychologist or a therapist when I was super stressed out. And getting some support around that. And I think just generally, in terms of managing stress and insomnia with pregnancy, I wasn't aware of much you could do. I don't know if that's changed since, but if like either I wasn't speaking to the right people at the time, or the knowledge wasn't there, or there is nothing much you can do anyway. I don't know, but I didn't get any support around those issues, and I really needed it.
Okay. Great. Any last things you want to add before we end?
I think that's everything.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was really fun.
That was great. And thank you to everybody who listened to this episode in English. I hope that people are okay with us putting out an episode in English. And if people like it, we can do more. And if you know anybody who had a birth experience in France who doesn't speak French and would like to share, they send them our email.
All right. Thanks. Lovely.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Merci à toi de nous avoir écoutés. Rendez-vous sur notre prochaine interview. Pour nous soutenir, abonne-toi et suis-nous sur les réseaux.